Well, good morning, everyone. This weekend, we are rapidly approaching the end of the church year. This is the 33rd Sunday in Ordinary Time. Next week is Christ the King, and then, boom, we're in Advent already. And as you know, the readings at this time of year tend to focus on the end times. And some of those images that we get are not real exciting, are they? The sun will be darkened, the stars will fall from the sky. And Mark, the Gospel of Mark, picks up from the prophet Daniel when he says, it will be a time unsurpassed in distress. But this morning, I'd like to call your attention to the last couple verses in the prophet Daniel we just heard. But the wise shall shine brightly like the splendor of the firmament, and those who lead many to justice will be like the stars forever. The wise and the just shall be like stars burning brightly. The New Testament will call this the light of Christ. And no matter which cycle of readings we hear, as we approach the end of the church year, we are reminded we are called to seek justice, to love God and our neighbor, and to be the light of Christ to those around us. Now, normally in a homily, our job is to challenge the listener to live the gospel more fully and to console you a bit over the fact that you don't, as I don't either. But today I'd like to do something different, if you don't mind. As many of you know, I go to East Africa, Tanzania and Kenya, and have for, well, it's been 20 years now, and I'll be returning there in a couple weeks. I first went with Father John Judy. He introduced me. He shared his friendships with many people, and from there things just blossomed. And I've been going regularly ever since, as you know. And while I have typically gone by myself, I have not gone alone. You see, this parish has been a big part of the ministry that has happened there. And so today, instead of challenging you, I'd like to encourage you. Encourage you for all the good work that you have done and the ways that you have been the light of Christ to others, people you will likely never ever meet. So today we're going to have a little show and tell. I'm going to introduce you and show you some of the people and projects that have been part of the ministry over the years. And because we have these big screens, we can now show you some photographs. And there are a number of people and projects, so we're going to move through them kind of quickly. So I'll begin with Brother George Massey, who's a member of the Christian Brothers. And he's been my primary contact and very good friend for over 20 years. George is the catalyst for ministry in northern Tanzania and Kenya. He's our eyes and ears, if you will, and makes sure the right people get helped and the money gets to the right places. And my trips revolve around his availability because as a member of the leadership of the Christian Brothers, he has access to transportation, which is important because the people we see and visit are spread out over a large area. And George and I have traveled many miles together over the years. And you may remember that Brother George was here in 2018 and addressed most of our masses. And Father Jeff has been able to see George in one of his trips to Kenya a few years back. So this is George. Just a word about him. He grew up in a house that was a stick hut with his brothers and sisters, and his father left the family at an early age. So George, as the oldest, helped his mom to take care of the young ones and to survive. And despite growing up in great poverty, George is an amazing person. He gets a small allowance from the Christian Brothers, and he uses that allowance to help others. And when he runs out of money, he calls me and says, can we get some help for these folks, right? So he is a tremendous, tremendous person, and one of the main reasons I keep going back through his ministry that we participate in. Now, before we dive in, I want it to be clear that it's not all hard work. There's always time for a warm beer in East Africa. All right, so let's look at some of the people that we've helped over the years. First is Mama George. We've provided food or medicine and some clothing for Mama George. She lives in the village of Dongobesh, which is my second home in Tanzania. She speaks no English, but if I'm in the country anywhere, she knows it, and she's calling and saying, when is he going to come to visit? And we can't talk, because I know very little Swahili, but just my presence is so meaningful to her. We run around the house looking at each other saying, faraha, which is joy, just the joy of being together. So that's Mama George. Next, you may remember that we built a house for Scola, who was abused and abandoned by her husband because she was unable to give him a child. Her last pregnancy ended up, she delivered a little girl who died 2 days later from hydroencephalitis. And after that, her husband abused her, kicked her out of the house. So we built her a house, and it's big enough for her to take in other women who have been abused and abandoned. And here are some of those ladies who have stayed with her. Scola is second from the left. We've also helped Scola start a small shop and given her money for some medical expenses. One of the first people we helped was Wilbred. We first put him through high school and then Wildlife Management College, which enabled him to get a job as a wildlife ranger. He's on poaching patrol, very dangerous, but it's a steady job, which is hard to find for most people in Tanzania. And it doesn't pay a lot, but it's something. So this is Wilbred at his graduation from Wildlife Management College. And he has 2 children, one of whom is named Mark, oddly enough, and Irene. And we've helped with some of their educational expenses as well. I am dad to Wilbred and grandfather to Irene and young Mark. And then a few more people. Alex has finished his education. He's now an oxygen technician at a health center. Eric was graduated with a diploma in education in chemistry and biology. This is the only photo I could find of Eric. That's 20 years ago. He's a little older now. But he's on his way. Currently, we are supporting Ignis, and this is Ignis George Michael with Brother George. Ignis is currently attending the Brother Edmund Rice Secondary School in Arusha. It's a school run by the Christian Brothers, one of the finest in the country, and he's doing very well there. Next is Jenniferita Malley. She's working on her Bachelor of Education, specializing in special needs. So we're excited for her to get her degree. Now, over near the slopes of Kilimanjaro is a family named the Kessie family, who I met 20 years ago. And they're a large family, and we have assisted them with construction of an additional wing, if you will, to their current house, and also helped to repair the roof. They're a large family, and 2 of their children, one of their children is Father Augustine. And this is Father Augustine in front of that new addition to the house. For a time, Augustine was a Christian brother with Brother George, but now he's an ordained priest of the Diocese of Sami. And we provide a monthly stipend to Father Augustine so that he can minister to the needs of the people that he works with. And because you see, priests in Tanzania don't get a salary. All they get is what the people are able to give them, which, as you can imagine, is very little. And I was talking to a priest in Tanzania once about this, and he said, yeah, well, sometimes it can be difficult, but there's never been a priest starved to death in Tanzania. Amazing, huh? So here's Father Augustine with some nuns on his way to visit an outstation. Augustine is a man with many ideas, always something going on in his head. And at St. Patrick, we have our own needs. We got to fix the ceiling and HVAC and so forth. One of the latest things Father Augustine did was put windows in his house, in the priest's house. And his current project, we hope to help him out with that, is to provide toilets for his congregation. This is a pit latrine that services the hundreds of people in his parish. Well, Father Augustine has a sister. She's also very bright, Irene. And we helped Irene get a bachelor's degree in education and helped provide her with a laptop. She received top marks and was hired right away to teach in a government school, but then she went on and became a nun with the Holy Trinity Sisters and now teaches in a Catholic school. When I was there last 2 years ago, I went to Father Augustine's ordination, and August, George, Irene, and I were able to be together all in one place, and here they are. That's Augustine on the left, George in the middle, Irene on the right. And finally, you may remember that we installed a water purification project at Edmund Rice Secondary School. As I mentioned, it's run by the Christian Brothers, and that clean water has greatly increased the health of the students, who number 600 to 700. It's amazing, and it was one of the systems that Water Steps here in Louisville created. And that's the system behind the bars to prevent vandalism, but on the side around the corner there is a sign which acknowledges that St. Patrick Parish in Louisville, Kentucky helped with the installation of this system back in 2016. So you all will be remembered for many years there by many people. Okay, now we'll move to southern Tanzania to the town of Morogoro. After you fly into Dar es Salaam, you take a 4-hour car ride over to Morogoro, where there are 3 priests who I've known for these 20 years, 2 of whom are brothers. And part of our ministry there is helping them in their ministry, right? So the first is Father Caroli, the oldest of the brothers. He is the former Vicar General of that diocese. I first met him on my first trip when we helped their family build a new home. Their family home had been destroyed. He has a number of brothers and sisters, one of whom, Clarence, has polio, and so we were able to help them. And we've helped Father Caroli purchase a vehicle as well as some medical expenses for his heart condition. His brother, Father Stratton, was the former treasurer of the diocese and is now a chaplain at a university and pastor of a very large parish who's trying to build a new church. That's been ongoing for 4 or 5 years now, but we've sent a little money for that, as well as help Father Stratton build a car. And I mentioned that they have a brother, Clarence, who had polio, and Clarence got married not too long ago, so we helped with some of the wedding expenses because, oddly enough, it's a very expensive proposition to get married because you're expected to feed the entire village. So we helped Clarence with that. And the third priest is Father Remigius, a young man who I've known for many years, ordained just a few years ago. We helped him with seminary expenses, and through him we are now helping with the education of a 16-year-old girl named Yusta right there. And so, and then finally in Morogoro, back in 2011, we installed the first water purification project at a junior seminary there in town, and that's it there with Stratton on that side and Crowley in the middle. And so that's what's been going on in Tanzania. I want to conclude with the story of 2 ladies who are living in Nairobi. The first is Caroline. Both these ladies live in the slum of Kibera. You may have heard of it. It's one of the largest slums in the world, and the conditions there you can't imagine. Caroline lives together with her 2 daughters, her mother, and her handicapped sister, Teresa, who I'll mention in a minute. She's the backbone of the family, but about a year ago, she came down with cancer. Didn't have any money for treatments. So we helped her get treatments. She's had chemotherapy, and recently she had a 6-hour surgery and is recovering well, it appears. So we're hopeful that she'll be able to return to her family. And her sister, Teresa, that I mentioned, also lives with her in the slums now. Teresa contracted polio at the age of 1, and after several operations, she was able to walk with braces and crutches. But because of her illness, the father abandoned the family, abandoned her mother and the 4 children. They survived by selling vegetables on the side of the road, and somehow or another, Teresa was able to get a degree in information technology. And through that job, through that steady income, she and her extended family were able to move out of Kibera into an apartment. However, Teresa became pregnant. And because of that, she was fired from her job. She gave birth to a baby girl who died 2 days later. Naturally, she became very depressed. Without her job, the family couldn't afford the apartment, and they had to move back to Kibera. For a long time, Teresa couldn't even walk or move because her crutches and braces were worn out. And to make matters worse, there's no such thing as handicapped accessibility in Kibera Slum. So every day is a difficult one for her. Our dream is to someday have enough money to build a house for Teresa and her extended family. But like in all big cities, building a home is expensive, so it may take a while. But I'll be visiting Caroline and Teresa when I leave in a couple weeks. So that's pretty much a lot of what's been going on over the past few years. The needs are immeasurable, right? They're always ongoing. But I hope you feel encouraged. You've impacted so many lives. Your generosity, your support, and your prayers have been the light of Christ to all of these people and more. And as important as financial support is, equally or maybe even more important is this: the fact that they know that someone cares about them, that someone is praying for them, that they are not alone in this world to suffer. And that is incredibly uplifting to people that are struggling to get by, whether Eastern Kentucky or Eastern Africa. But I want to thank you for your support. I do want to say it isn't my purpose to solicit money today, but if you wanted to help with any of this ministry, you can see me after Mass or email me. But be encouraged, and thank you for being the light of Christ to so many people. It's made an incredible difference in their lives.